And then, of course, everybody was asking us about, oh, hey, man, hey, bro, heard a rumor from a friend of mine. His brother's a taxi cab driver in Poughkeepsie, and he had a fare who's from Boulder but didn't live there. Once he was 3, they moved to, like East Side Park, but he's from Boulder, and he heard that your mom knows a friend who's got a cousin who says that Utah isn't valuable to the Big 12, so they're not going to invite him to the Big 12, bro. True story. Bro. Like, the Twitter machine was lit today, Jake, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. Are the Utah Utes valuable to the Big 12?
Yeah, I mean, we've been having this conversation. We've been working through this. And yeah, I mean, I think Utah is valuable to the Big 12, but Utah is only as valuable as they want to be. I mean, when you have a situation where they don't want to go, and now we're getting rumor mill after rumor mill about how the Big 12 is interested or not interested, or, wants this or wants that, like, it's just endless. And I think that, when we get down to brass tacks, just like we've done, in prior weeks on prior topics on this, topic, like, I look at this and I say, damn, dude, like, let's stop with the rumor mill and, like, let's just look at it and be honest about it, which is, like, yeah, Utah would be a valuable ad for the Big 12, but you have a situation where Utah is just stubborn. Utah, prioritizes academics over the big picture, and to me, that's a mistake, but I'm not them. I'm not the nerd running Utah. I'm not the academic scholar, the 15-star student that's running Utah in the Pac-12. They are, and so for me, it's like, yeah, sure, in concept, Utah is valuable to the Big 12. A P5 program, back-to-back Pac-12 champion, AAU member, like all this great stuff. You've got the total package at Utah that nobody knows about because they never market themselves. So yeah, they're valuable to the Big 12. But I don't think Utah does itself any favors in these conversations. And it doesn't especially do itself any favors when you have your AD tweeting about not leaving the Pac-12.
But wait a minute. See, and this is one of the things that happens, with all due respect to casuals and mids like you. This is what happens in these conversations. Well, but Utah's not helping themselves. It doesn't matter. Is Utah athletics valuable to the Big 12? I think you have to compartmentalize these discussions. Are you correct about Utah? Yes. The Utes don't market themselves nearly enough. I think the Pac-12 has failed Utah. If there are failures in the Pac-12, certainly Utah has to be the best example of that, because nobody knows how special, nobody knows how dominant the football program's been. Nobody knows about the Red Rocks. Nobody, I don't think, knows or cares that Utah women's basketball has had a sensational season. And a lot of that is the Utes rely on Twitter alone and social media alone to get the word out, because you don't have a TV network that's doing that for you. Does that mean that Utah is any less valuable? It does not. Is there some way possible that Fox and ESPN do not value Utah? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They draw 1 million people when they're on TV most weeks. Like, I don't believe for a second that the Big 12 or its media partners are like, nah, you don't need Utah. No, Utah. Is Utah one of the first 4 in? There's a big chance they're not. Because I do think, and I've been told repeatedly, that there is a battle for San Diego State, much like Gonzaga. I believe that San Diego State has a verbal offer from the Pac-12. In fact, I know they do. And I also believe that San Diego State is a very big target for the Big 12. And that's not surprising at all to me. But the bottom line is, are you going to take San Diego State over Utah? For a lot of reasons, absolutely not. But the fact that it cripples the Pac-12, in my mind, Jake, that's reason enough for the Big 12 to take San Diego State over Utah.
Yeah, if you're the Big 12, yeah, that's a perfectly fine strategy. I just think that, we disagree on Utah. I think Utah is being silly about this. I think that Utah, wants to be the biggest and baddest educational institution in the land, and I respect that. I'm not saying that's dumb. That's obviously a huge achievement, and I think what they do educationally is top-notch. There's no denying that, right? This isn't really a conversation about whether they're good at education or not. They are one of the best in the land at education. There's, like, the numbers say that. But for me, I just think it makes no business sense to take the approach of yeah, we don't want to be surrounded by squads in the Big 12 because they're not good or as good educationally. And yeah, they're not as good educationally. But I look at this, and we shouldn't even have to talk about whether the Big 12 should take San Diego State or Utah. This isn't even a conversation. It's disrespectful to Utah that we're even having that conversation, but that's precisely my point. Utah puts itself in that position all the time, right? All the time. Whether we're talking about the college football playoff and USC or we're talking about this conversation, they do it to themselves all the time. And I guess I'm just this is who Utah is. We know who they are. They're an institution that prioritizes education over athletics and prioritizes education over marketing. We know that. That's just who they are. So I'm not surprised, but I do think it's kind of a backwards approach that they're taking. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm mid. Maybe I'm a casual and don't know anything about this. But to me, that's what it looks like.
But you're mid not because of your thoughts on Utah. I mean, you're just, as a human, you're just mid.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's
right,
not.
Yeah.
I mean,
mm-hmm. Right.
Anyway, I think that Utah is tremendously undervalued. And I think a lot of it, in my opinion, has to do with the fact that you don't have, and again, this is just my opinion, I think it has to do with the fact that you don't have a marketing machine that pushes and spends valuable money to tell the story of how good Utah athletics are. I really don't. I think it's one of those deals where I just don't know that the management, if you will, of the University of Utah cares enough about athletics. And what does that mean, cares enough? Certainly they value academics more than athletics.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even saying that's a bad thing. But when we're talking about conference realignment and we're talking about Big 12 expansion, if you have Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado that leave the conference, you absolutely need to be one of the teams. If you're Utah, I think you need to be that fourth team. And I think they will be. I don't think there's any doubt. I think this nonsense, these lies on Twitter about Utah not being valuable, if you're buying into that, I think you just don't know the landscape of college football.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I understand why everybody wants to be a red ass and put San Diego State into the conversation because they've earned their way in. But there's not a chance in the world that San Diego State is more valuable from a sports perspective than Utah is. There's not. I think the damage that losing the four corner schools does to the Pac-12, I think you can't even measure it.
Yeah.
I don't even think you will fully be able to grasp that. As much as people talk about Oregon and Washington, you don't have a conference without Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah. You don't.
Yeah.
You do not. You can add anybody's, Central Valley State college that you want. You're not replacing the Arizona schools, Colorado, and Utah.
That's an issue.
I don't see how you would even begin to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's the heart of your conference. I mean, that's just, I mean, you're not doing that. Yeah.
I think it's crazy. Jacob Reed, a West Virginia fan, very clearly, gives us $10 to say, I would be content if we only added Arizona, Arizona State, and Colorado. If Utah wants to die on the Pac-12 altar, then it would be their hubris that kills their athletic program.
Precisely.
It's hard to argue with that. It is hard to argue with that. I mean, I think I don't even know, does anybody in here undervalue Utah? Is there anybody who doubts their athletic prowess? I mean, from baseball to gymnastics, Olympic sports, whatever you want to point to.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. I mean, the basketball program, does it win enough? Clearly it does not. But there's no questioning the football program. There is no questioning the overall dynamic and the quality of the athletic program at Utah.
Yeah.
And you pile the education on top of that, and I don't think it's in question. The DA says $10 million per year more than the PAC. That's a lot of money. That's a whole lot of money, DA. I don't disagree with that. Mike Chase, how the heck are you? Mike says, I would say yes. They the Pac-12 champs 2 years in a row, and they would bring the Holy War back, which would bring revenue to the conference. I'm here for that every single day.
I think, though, you have to understand that the Holy War isn't as valuable nationally as it is here in Utah. It is, to me, it's one of the biggest rivalries in college football, and it's again tremendously underrated. And you notice how this is a theme, and I have to be honest. I get tired of talking about this whole concept of Utah not marketing itself and how, Utah is undervalued. You get what you've earned, and Utah's earned that. Like, Utah has put itself in that position. And I'm the guy that says they have a great football program. They're really strong educationally. Like, I'm not even doubting any of this. I'm not. Like, I love Utah. But what I know to be fact is that you don't tell your story. You release one cute video a year when you're trying to get into the college football playoff.
Why does this bother you so much?
Because I just think it's a crying shame. It's just so fitting that they're in the Pac-12, because this is what the Pac-12 does, right? Like, we've been talking about for, 8 years? Like, almost the entire lifespan of the time we're working on 1,000 episodes of this show. Since the inception of this show, Larry Scott and the Pac-12 have been struggling to market the Pac-12. And Oregon is really the only one that does anything up until the last year and a half with USC in the Pac-12. And it bothers me because we're sitting here having a conversation about Pac-12 survival, essentially. And we're trying to sit here and talk about how Utah is undervalued. But the problem is it's no surprise Utah is undervalued, because that's the position you put. It's almost like this concept of, hey, like, one of the worst teams, think of one of the worst programs in the country that you can think of, whatever example you want to use. Like, I'll even use BYU as an example. This new program, new conference, all this new stuff happening, had a rough year last year. But if you if you didn't watch any of their games, and you just watch their YouTube channel or their Twitter, Instagram, their social stuff, you'd have never known that, because they tell that story and they keep it positive and they work their ass off to get out in front of Buddy over in Maine on the East Coast.
But I also think they invest a hell of a lot of money in that.
Yeah.
And I think there's a significant difference there. The things that have ailed Utah, from NIL being behind the curve to Britton Covey leading the way in NIL to, all of these things, it's not an ability thing. It is, I don't think it's an acumen thing. I think it is an execution piece. And I think it's one of the things that plagued the Chris Hill era. But now, we're in this same thing now with Harlan, where he's talking about we're not leaving. And I want to understand the mentality of that.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
But you look at the way that, look at Blake Freeland over the weekend. Yeah. Utah offensive lineman Blake Freeland was an absolute freak at the combine, and BYU put out a ton of tape on that. Everywhere they put out a ton of tape on that. What does BYU have to gain by that? Well, obviously recruiting, and obviously the ability to say, hey, we put guys in the NFL. But where's the Utah tape? Where it's Twitter, it exists, but I can tell you, as somebody that makes a living on YouTube, searches for Utah Ute athletic content are rock bottom. They are not high. They are not trending. But if you search BYU or BYU football in the tool, because YouTube gives you a tool and tells you, hey, high, medium, low, Utah football is a low search. Utah athletics are a low search. U of U athletics, University of Utah. Utah football, Utah Utes football. Those are all medium and low searches. Everything BYU is high because they're putting out content constantly, and that's the difference. To me, it makes a difference. This is where it comes to roost. When we're talking about joining a conference, frankly, do they need Utah? They don't. They absolutely don't need Utah. Would you rather have Utah over San Diego State? You would.
Facts.
You would. Because I think the worst thing that can happen for the Big 12 is it's a program like Utah ends up in the Big 10, which I don't think it will, by the way. I think Utah's going to the Big 12.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is the story's not being told by the University of Utah.
And that's what bothers me. That's why I get kind of, a little begrudged by it, because it's like, damn, dude, you have all of this offering. You have you have just as nice of a campus. You have I think most people here agree, especially those of you who are in Salt Lake with us. Utah's campus and the backdrop at Utah is amazing. It's one of the most majestic around, but you don't really see that too much. And it's like you did all this renovation at Rice Echoes. The Salt Lake Bees are moving out to Daybreak. There's a lot of rumor mill and a lot of smoke around a new baseball facility coming in that same plot of land for Utah. If that were to happen, I would expect a full Like, if that was BYU having that opportunity, dude, I'd expect like a full documentary on building the stadium, bro. Like, and I'm not even exaggerating.
Yeah, I just don't know how you fix this, man. Like, I don't know what you do with the Big 12 versus the Pac-12, because the funny thing is, I think the Big 12 now, where they currently sit, this is a time to bury the Pac-12. That's plain and simple. That's what this is. If the Big 12 wants to bury the Pac-12, you got to get aggressive, because, again, I think as we reported first here, and now Pete Thamel last night at ESPN released a story basically reporting what we said on Friday,
Facts.
which is that this is a critical week for the Pac-12.
Yeah.
The next, I don't know what, Jake, would you say 10 days?
Yeah, I think we're the Pac-12 just in, I speak from the experience of covering this topic and really following this story. Like, it is apparent to me that the Pac-12 works sort of in windows. Like, you would, like, obviously conversations are ongoing, but it gets sort of intensified in these sort of mini windows. So, like, you saw that, Colorado is having this meeting with which there will be no votes because that has to happen in a public setting. But they're having a meeting. They're getting their ducks in a row. So to me, when I hear things like that, you have basketball tournaments going on. You have ways to get things done, or like opportunities, that is. So, yeah, I would say that, yeah, you're probably operating in like a 7 to 10 day hot window here for sure.
And I say that because there's going to essentially be a meeting of the minds of the Pac-12 at the men's basketball tournament. And if that men's basketball tournament meeting does not go well, it's over. Because I don't think anybody doubts now what we've reported for the last month, that you've had Brett Yormark going through the Pac-12 and leveraging relationships that he has, and that his individual institutions and leadership at his institutions have. And again, Tom Homo with Utah, that's the other reason I don't necessarily buy into this. The Big 12 doesn't want Utah. I know factually from multiple sources that Tom Homo has been trying to build a bridge with Utah to join the Big 12.
Yeah.
And they have said, yeah, academically, we're not there yet. We can't pull the trigger on that because of academics, which lit this little man's heart on fire the other day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're clearly not over it.
I'll own it. Like, I'm accountable to it. I don't like it. I think it's, I like, without being too harsh, I don't have a lot of nice things to say about that concept, because I can understand if Utah wants to say, okay, hey, by going to the Big 12, we're going to lose, let's just use AAU status as an example, even though they're not losing that. Hey, we're going to lose our AAU, status or symbol or whatever. Okay, now I'm listening, because now it's like, okay, to make this move, you're basically going to have to like knock yourself down, 10 rungs on the academic ladder. But that's not going to happen. And I understand the concept of, hey, rising tide, raises all ships. Being surrounded by the Stanfords and the Cals and all these great institutions, absolutely, that's a plus. But my problem is, and the reason I get so, frustrated, I guess is the word I'll use
uppity.
With it.
You get uppity.
Uppity, right? Like, the reason I get uppity about it is because I'm just like, dude, like, we're not talking about whether you should go to the Big 12 or not. You should absolutely go to the Big 12. This isn't even a conversation. We know that. But Utah is treating this as if it's like, oh, well, even though the Pac-12 may not exist in 2 years, we're not quite there academically. It's like, okay, fine. If you want to go and die on the Pac-12 ship, that's fine. But no one else is going to wait around for you. And the problem is, if you do it after the fact, if the Pac-12 burns to the ground and now you got to crawl on your hands and knees back to Brett Yormark, you're going to look like an idiot. And I don't want that for Utah. That's not the position you want to be in.
Yep, I agree. Louis Du says San Diego State is more valuable as a potential market. You're being John Canzano for Utah. Okay, so let me explain why that's sort of true. For the Pac-12, San Diego State's an incredibly important market because they're a West Coast conference and they have no presence below Stanford and Cal. They have no presence at all below Stanford and Cal. So if you look at, I mean, quite literally on a map, go find Palo Alto, and you can only go north to find Pac-12. You can't go south.
Yeah.
If you look at the Big 12, that's not at all their footprint. Their footprint right now is mountain to the east with BYU in the mountain region. And if you push east, obviously you get into your Texases, your Oklahomas, so what, your Houston, your TCU, you're into Florida, you're into West Virginia, you're into Cincinnati, you're into the Kansases, that's their footprint. So is it dead or alive for the Big 12 to get San Diego State? It's not. Would you deliver yourself Los Angeles if you got San Diego State? You would not. You would not.
Hell no.
Now, if you're the Pac-12 and you got San Diego State, would you deliver yourself Los Angeles? You probably would. You probably would, because you have a lot of baked-in fans who are in that region I can't tell you how many Angelinos, I can't tell you how many people from Los Angeles, Bakersfield, Fresno, North, go to San Diego State. It's a lovely place. It's a great school. I mean, a ton of Californians, specifically Angelinos, go to San Diego State. How many people from Manhattan, Kansas go to San Diego State? How many people from Laramie, Wyoming go to San Diego State? So think about the mountain region. How many people from Utah go to San Diego State? Decent number. What does that mean to the Big 12? Nothing. How many people from Houston go to San Diego State?
Yeah.
Dallas. None. Stillwater. None. Kansas City. Almost none. That's why it's way more valuable to the Pac-12 to get San Diego State, and it's a kick in their balls if the Big 12 adds them.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess that we're being John Canzano for Utah.
Does that mean we're being Utah homers?
I guess that's what that's an
mean?
inference to, but I just disagree with you. Let's see. Jeremy says the way that the media folks determine value, adding Utah isn't massively bigger than adding Oregon State and Washington State because they seem fixated with market size, etc. The bottom line for the Pac-12, it's a very different proposition value-wise than the Big 12. Mm-hmm. Everybody wants to say, well, it's all just about for everybody. It's all about eyeballs on the. It's not. Actually, it's not. For the Pac-12, it is, because you lost USC and UCLA. You lost millions of viewers every single week in one of the largest media markets in the country. So you have got to find a way to just pour new gas on the fire, right?
Yep.
If you're in the Big 12, what are you really trying to do? What are you really interested in? Well, what you're interested in is opening up new revenue streams, which means later windows. So if it's San Diego versus Los Angeles, again, for the Big 12, that's nice because now you can have Big 12 after dark, right? Because currently you don't have that. You don't have the Pacific time zone, which is why Brett Yormark has so clearly said we want to add a fourth time zone, because you've got West Virginia way out in coal country. You absolutely dominate the middle part of the country.
Yes.
So you've got the central time zone. You've got the eastern time zone. You've got the mountain time zone. You have nothing in the Pacific time zone. So it's why so many people have pointed to UNLV, which I don't think is an option at all in any way, shape, or form. But if you look at San Diego State, that's their value. It's not that, they have X amount of eyes, because it's not necessarily that San Diego or San Diegans represent some huge influx of viewership.
Yeah.
It's a new revenue stream. It's a new time slot on Fox Sports. It's a new time slot on ESPN because you already have a TV deal in place.
Yes.
Right? So I think you have to think through these things a little bit more. Think through it a little bit more. But don't kid yourself. What would be a new revenue stream? San Diego State and trying to find travel partners with San Diego State? Because again, if you add San Diego State, it's a jaunt to get there. Because they're the only ones that are on an island, so I don't really think you'd do that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you add Utah, now you have a late game window, and you have one of the best rivalries in the country. And by the way, if you add the Utah Utes football team, do you not almost instantly have another seat at the college football playoff table?
You do. You do.
Especially in an expanded college football playoff.
So I said Utah's incredibly valuable to the Big 12. But again, the difference is the Big 12 doesn't have to act out of desperation, and the Pac-12 does.
That's right. Absolutely. The DA. I think Utah will slowly degrade once Whittingham is gone. Well, that's a huge talking point. That is a huge talking point because Kyle Whittingham, thanks to our friends at the Pac-12 networks and their arrogance, Kyle Whittingham is one of the most undervalued coaches in the country. Humans in the country, the maker of men in the country.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, he's spectacular. Patrick Bourne, what's up, Patrick? Good to see you, man. He says, not me, I would take Utah. Outside the echo chamber, I think Utah is comfortable as a follower, not a leader. Well, we've heard that for several months now, which is an unfortunate tragedy, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Matt Hartley says Utah's football program needs to figure out how to beat a non-Pac-12 opponent. They do. They've got to beat Florida to open the season. Done. That's it. And again, if Cam Rising makes that throw in the swamp, last season's a completely different season. And obviously, Brant Keithy doesn't get hurt. The guy's a flipping stud.
Yeah.
And Dalton and Cam and like all this stuff. But they did get hurt. And they didn't beat Florida. So now you get Cam back, you get Brant back, you get, another shot on home turf. They're going to beat Florida. They're going to beat Florida, plain and simple. Max Marchand says, welcome to the Mountain West, Utah. No, I don't think so. Cougar Tracks. Utah basketball is not that good. Women's basketball this year, one of the best teams in the country, except in the tournament. The DA says, Jake, so the Utah women's basketball team, highly ranked, had a great year. Jake's like, watch him lose in the first round of the tournament.
The radio people in this town. Putting on the coach for half an hour at a time.
Half an hour? It was 45 minutes.
Okay, 45 minutes at a time.
The local morning show, we drive to work about 7:30 every day, right? Because we don't have lives. So we drive to work at 7:30. We flip on one of the local sports talk shows. It's the Utah women's basketball coach with no reset. It's not like they're like, okay, Jan Thompson, Utah basketball coach, joins us on the show. Blah, blah, blah. Jan Thompson? No, none of that. Had no idea who you were talking to until she started talking about it. And it was 45 minutes of pain because it was a terrible interview. She was great, and they just clearly were not listening to her. It was brutal.
But my point is, so you put her on, and I don't even have an issue with you putting her on. That's fine. I wouldn't do 45 minutes. I'd do
10 minutes.
10, 12 minutes, yeah.
10 minutes.
I would do 10 minutes with her. But what's funny is, I'm not surprised. You hyped the hell out of this team, right? You hyped the living hell out of this team, and that's what happens. That's what the tournament's about. Good teams fall all the time in the first round. I'm not reinventing the wheel with that one. Like, that's what March Madness is about. So for me, it just is what it is.
Super stoked. I'm looking at my phone. I'm looking at my Ring camera at my crib. And that means house. Anyway, the point is, I'm looking... I'm an idiot. I'm looking at my front door, and let's go. DHL just delivered a beautiful new sign. Mrs. Monty is dragging it into the house as we speak. Let's go. Super stoked. Because we have, and we'll show it to you tomorrow now because it'll be installed tonight. We have a big wall to my left, and it's about to get a major facelift. I am so excited about that. You guys don't care. DA says, question, what will happen to Oregon and Washington if the Big Ten does not want them right away? I don't know. That's a really compelling question. Because when you look at, I think Oregon is the prize of the conference of what's left. I would have told you USC is always the biggest brand, blah, blah, blah. Okay, a-holes torpedoed the conference. They took UCLA with them. Chip Kelly's fat, and he doesn't win. Okay, fine, go.
All right, we're good with that.
Now you got Oregon and Washington. And I think Oregon is the athletic prize in the conference. I think from swagger, I think Phil Knight, I think recruiting, I think home field advantage, I think a terrible basketball court. They're almost useless in basketball. But my point is, football, which by the way makes you some bread. I don't know if you guys might have heard that.
Yeah, maybe.
It makes you some bread. I'm telling you that it is. I think it's pretty spectacular. And I understand, I think Stanford has more brand value than Washington. Okay, just because I think of the academics and I think of the revenue stream that Stanford could potentially be in your conference. I have a hard time believing the Big Ten's going to say no.
Man, this concept of academics is just...
Dude,
wild,
you're not
dude.
on board with it.
It's
And I get it.
Absolutely wild, dude.
I get. Why do you say that?
Stanford, I get. You're ranked number 3 in the country for
Number
academics.
third. You almost said number 3.
Well, almost doesn't count.
Dude, you hate this conversation so much.
I'm tired of calculus nerd running football ops, bro. Don't talk to me about how you did on your math test or like how you did in social sciences 1801.
So there's a locomotive.
Damn.
There's a locomotive headed from El Paso to Palo Alto. It's traveling 71 miles an hour, but there's a left turn at the Salt Lake. Jimmy.
What was the Salt Lake?
Well, thank you. Through the old Salt Lake bed. Jimmy in his Tesla with 3/4 of a battery charge is on a diagonal isosceles angle 36 degrees.
Hey, guys.
Will Jimmy get that ass crushed by the locomotive, or is he good to go to
Can you measure it?
To run out of battery in the Nevada desert?
Until one of us passes the fuck out.
If you can answer that question, we might let you apply to get into Stanford.
Like, what are we talking about? Oh, yeah. So Stanford, because they get A's on all their tests, has more brand value to the Big Ten than Washington. What? What do you mean, dude? You mean the campus that's like the size of a grain of salt? You mean the football stadium that's never full? Dude, come on, man.
If you take the thickness of the atmosphere and you divide that by the thickness of your crank.
Your crank.
Jackass.
But you get my point.
Yes, dude.
We're talking about all this stuff with academics, and it does matter. I don't know how to break it to you guys, and I know meatheads like you don't want to hear it.
Stop crying like a little girl.
Yeah, but academics matter, dude. They do. And whether you're Utah or you're Stanford or Cal or any of these other bankrupt pricks, like, it matters. It matters, right? The problem at Cal is, you want to know the truth about Cal athletics? The problem is
it's garbage.
Well, but it's not that they don't win. The issue is that they're still in such a financial hole from the renovation of Memorial Stadium. I don't think they'll ever get out of it because they don't win. They don't want to spend money that it requires you to spend to win.
Let me get this right. You have all this academics and you can't figure out how to make enough money to pay for the debt you're in.
What's amazing to me is you have all this academics. Okay, so look, the nuclear triangle of physics is, X minus Y equals middle finger in your eye. But I can't balance my checkbook in the athletic department.
Like,
you've got nuclear scientists. You've got like unbelievable theology.
you've got the guy that figures out how to get the nuke button turned on when Pootie wants to get at it.
Pootie.
And you can't get your checkbook. You can't get QuickBooks to work right in the accounting office. Like, that's why I get annoyed, dude. It's like the idea that education is just so far and away more important to the Pac-12 is absolutely incredible to me. You don't hear about this in the SEC.
No,
you don't hear about it in the Big Ten.
And the funny thing is, I was talking to a dude that is a Utah alum, and he's like, because we're not from, if you guys don't know this, if you're new to the show, we're not from here.
With all due respect.
We have no loyalty to Utah or BYU or whatever, right? So he's like, you guys are really lucky because right now it's painful. So his wife's parents are professors at Utah. And they couldn't tell you the last time that Utah played a game, let alone won a national championship, or they could not they don't know who Rick Majerus is. They don't know who Sean Bradley is. They don't know who Kyle Whittingham is, right? And so he's like, you don't understand. They don't want to hear about it.
Who the fuck are you?
That's the reality. When you are at an institution like Utah or Stanford or Cal or Washington, frankly, pretty much every school in the Pac-12, they're always going to put academics first. Look at Boulder. How crazy is it that Deion Sanders has gotten to Colorado and they just now tweak the way that they allow people to get into the school?
Buddy couldn't have a cup of coffee without the nerds reporting him for praying.
It's crazy how difficult it is to just get in. The qualifications, you guys understand, the qualifications just to apply at Stanford.
And I wake up in the morning, I piss excellent.
Will melt your head. It will absolutely melt your brain how difficult it is to get into places like Stanford. All right, let's see. Gumby Extra Regular says Stanford, F-U-R-D, junior college kid, eh? Is not a small campus. Oh, my God.
He said Ferd.
Listen, man. If you've ever been to...
My mind is blown!
Bro.
A, nobody goes to Stanford athletics.
Whatever.
B, that's a tiny... Like, their alumni bases... Don't do that. Let's see. Tanner Plummer, who's a member of the show, says academics matter, but I don't think it matters as much as people think. Well... We're going to find out. It's not a right or wrong because eventually these moves are going to get made and all the people on Twitter being like, oh, hey, guess what? Like, they want San Diego State more. Okay, well, we'll find out. We'll find out. Tony Altamore says, you guys are totally Dixie State dropouts. The research dollars trump athletic pennies.
Okay, we didn't go to Dixie State, so...
That's all we've been saying is that the research. Oh, my God. See, this is the guy who's been here like 5 minutes.
Yeah, dude.
Dude, like, please. Come on, man.
You're the nerd that just walked into the football room and started talking to me about XYZ banana.
Yeah.
Hell out of here with that.
You know. Huge Big 12 fan here, and I'd love to have Utah and their stuck-up snotty fans, too. Ouch.
Thank you.
You're not wrong.
Thank you.
Dude, you're not wrong. It makes life more entertaining. Patrick Bourne says they owe cable TV $50 million. Well, that's another great point. I mean, the deal with Comcast, there's no getting away from that. There is no getting away from that. And yeah.
Well, and I don't think we should characterize it as the deal with Comcast. You meant to say the quote oversight known as Comcast in the accounting office.
It's accidental.
Saudi stooge.
That's the funny thing is. So you're this great academic conference.
Come on.
And again, they are. I'm not even being sarcastic. The Pac-12 is this great academic conference. And you can't count Comcast money correctly. And then when you counted it correctly and you knew they had overpaid, you said nothing about it. Dude, it's so dirty. It is so dirty. Roger Sales. What's up, Roger? Is a member of the program. Cal Sports is shutting down free speech, not football. Okay, probably a different show. Jason says they have a lot of money but don't want to spend it on sports. And that's the truth. People like universities, he also says Stanford should dominate NIL with their alumni. Truth. But the money that Stanford makes on academics, on research, on all of their different grant programs, don't do it, please. I'm begging you. Have a life.
Please.
Have a life. Kiss your dogs goodnight. Tuck them in instead of going down the black hole of how much money does Stanford make. Dude, it's billions of dollars that we're talking about that's available.
Let me ask you this, though, because I don't doubt that. Mm-hmm. If Stanford, Utah, whatever Pac-12 school you want to use, we all know the names and where they're going to go. But let's just use Stanford as an example. If Stanford were to join the Big 12, you really tell me that their billions of dollars is just going to get chopped in half and they're not going to make that money anymore?
No, but I think we just had this argument the other day.
I know.
I think when you're Stanford, Cal, Utah, very clearly Utah, when you are an academic focused university, you want to be in the Pac-12 because doing business, just putting Stanford on your letterhead makes you far more attractive. I honest to God, we joke about this all the time. Jake, if you just solo up on Jake, he's not that attractive of a guy, right?
That's right.
But then
Dave.
you put us in a two-shot and you have him sitting next to a good-looking guy like
You
me.
fucking donkey.
All of a sudden, Gorilla Face is a little more attractive, right? So it's the same thing. It's not the same thing. But you put You put Utah in a line, and in that line is Stanford and Cal and Washington, and you just keep going with Arizona is a really good academic school. I'm never going to say Arizona.
You know what they all have in common? They're all garbage on the football field.
Because they don't care.
So here's my
They
question.
don't care.
And I know that this is ridiculous, but if these institutions like Stanford, because Stanford's my favorite example, because even with Stanford, I level with Stanford. Hey, you're the third best institution in all the land at academics.
Ever.
Like, okay, I get it, right? Like, I understand why you would say, hey, we don't want to be surrounded by the scourge of the underworld in the Big 12. Okay, I understand that. But if you're so academic focused, just roll it up in football and basketball.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear about sports if that's going to be your mentality. And I know that's ridiculous. I know that would never happen. But I almost feel like it's like, dude, like you're talking about the conference that you love to be in is going to come to an end. And it will come to an end at some point. Like whether that's this year, 4 years, like whenever, that's going to happen. We know that. That's natural progression. So with that being the case, like, what are you doing?
But that's one of the hardest things for me as somebody that's passionate about the Pac-12. I don't want to see the Pac-12 come to an end. I just want the Pac-12 to do business. And they've never, since they expanded back in the day, they've never done business. And
when you say that, what does that mean?
Get on everybody's TV. It's what Brian Lawler from Script Sports said yesterday. We got to be on people's TV, on their phone, on their computer. It's what Ryan Smith, the owner of the Jazz, says. We got to be everywhere. You have to have reach. The Pac-12 has never. What would this conference be? And I'm being serious. Think about this. What would the Pac-12 be if they actually had real, tangible reach? Where you were on ESPN, ABC, Fox Sports, everybody's phone, DirecTV Stream. You're on everybody's phone. You're on in this new TV deal. If you had Amazon Prime Sports, if you had ESPN and you had Fox, and you had reach everywhere, and you shut down Pac-12 networks, and I love their business model, this idea that we've been telling you about where, hey, the networks go away, they're just going to become a video production house, essentially.
Yeah.
But all your games are on Amazon, ESPN, ESPN.com, the ESPN app. Your basketball, just like the Big 12 deal, your basketball is pretty much all on Fox, but none of that's happening. That's all make-believe. It's not real. And now we're in this situation where sources told us last week, you're stuck at $22 million.
It's really unfair.
It's a game of the week on Amazon, and it's one, maybe two games on ESPN. And where does that leave you? That leaves you nowhere. And the hard part for me, being somebody who genuinely cares and deeply is passionate about Pac-12 sports, that's not a way to make a living. It's not. And you can be upset about it. And again, for all of our Big 12 listeners and viewers, dude, I tip your cap to Brett Yormark because he just has outmaneuvered this conference left and right. And I put all of these failings on George Kliavkoff because he just is not unified.
And he
not
will
led.
every single time.
None of that.
Yeah.
Gumby Extra Regular says Kyle Wattingham. Utah professors. Exactly. Louis Dew just says I.
Okay, cool.
Tony J. Altimore says you two Jamokes and John Kurtz are Big 12 Anon's biggest supporters. See,
Bro, I don't even know what you're talking about with that. Like, what does that even mean?
A, it's pretty early. I don't know where you are, but it's pretty early in the afternoon to be drinking. B, again, you are clearly new to the show.
Yeah.
Anybody that says I'm a Big 12 homer, was it not just a week ago that Big 12 fans were like, you're a Pac-12 homer? I must be doing something right. Because
we're not Big 12
and Tony,
homers, dude.
Tony, again, I don't know you. You're new to the show, which is, hey, that's great, man. While you're here, everybody, all 471 of you, please hit the like button. It really helps the channel grow. But Tony, you're clearly new to the show, and you're not a name I know on our show, so welcome to the program. You're welcome to hang out or not. It's fine. But I just want you to know that Bucked Up is the official energy drink of the Monty Show.
Program.
BuckedUp.com. Make sure you get your free samples and shaker in the description below. 3 free samples, and this is the greatest shaker you're ever going to own, and I did it yesterday, I shouldn't because I spilled water over everything, but so many people have asked me about this little feature right here. I'm telling you, it is the single greatest shaker cup you'll ever own. Like the having the blender balls like attached to this post on the lid, dude, game changer. Yes, as somebody said in the YouTube comments yesterday, what kind of idiot drops their balls down the garbage disposal? This guy. I've done
it happens, dude.
I have done that.
Like a bunch of times.
I have done that. But I love that it's attached. I love that it's got a big thick shaft on it.
Yeah.
It's a great shaker cup. They're basically bulletproof. And I would tell you, it is the best shaker you'll ever own. If you're a workout guy and you take pre-workout, sample their pre-workout. Whatever the sample is you want, they'll give you 3 free samples and a shaker of your choice. Click the link in the description below. They'll send it right to your house for free. Go to buckedup.com. Buy any of their supplements. I'm telling you, I use their pre-workout and their BCAAs.
What do you bet?
Their Peach Ring BCAAs they are remarkable. So I would tell you, hey, use their Peach Ring BCAAs. Get all the samples now in the link below in our YouTube description. And you get 3 free samples in a shaker. It's amazing. Use the promo code Monty on their website, MONTY, Monty on their website to get 20% off. And of course, you can go into any Bucked Up store in Utah. Tell them you heard about them on the Monty Show. They'll give you a free can of Bucked Up Energy. I'm telling you, drink the Miami.
Yeah.
Because that's where it's at. Football 50 in 2 minutes here on the Monty Show. Let's run through some of your comments here real quick. Let's see. Patrick Boren, or Russ Fisher, excuse me, says, just a comparison about the money. If you did a worldwide search, Stanford is number 104 rated academics in the world?
Yeah, that's what I mean, dude.
That's crazy.
But do you see what I mean? Like with Stanford, I get it. Hey, you're like the best of the best. You're like ultra elite, like on top of the world. Like that's an insane stat, you know? For me, though, other schools that are ranked, I think Utah's like 104th, I think it was. And like, you have some of these, low 100 rankings in the country. Like, no offense, but you're not like an elite, best of the best, like so good that you can ignore the money type school, So for me, I look at this and I say, okay, with Stanford, I get it. I understand. Hey, you're academic to the point where sports quite literally just don't matter. You're not relevant, never have been, never going to be. Like, we get it. I understand that's a stance you've taken. But for Utah, they're winning the Pac-12 back-to-back years. Now, I understand they let us down in the Rose Bowl back-to-back years, but they're relevant. They're good. We know that the running Utes can get back to being, the running Utes. So for me, that's where I'm like, dude, like, what are we doing? Like, why is there this hesitation? It really should be school for school. If I'm Brett Yormark, I'm saying, all right, hey, Utah has some hesitation. Stanford's probably not an option for us. Neither is Oregon and Washington because they're really just not a fit for our conference. But the Arizona schools, absolutely. Colorado and Prime, I think Prime is a massive supporter of going to the Big 12. That's an opinion. Haven't heard that. But just watching Prime, watching the way he behaves and runs programs, I think he's a massive supporter of a move to the Big 12 because what does that allow him to do? It's more content, more content, more content, more hype, more hype. That's what Prime, thrives off of. So for me, I just think that this whole situation can be fixed by people coming to the table genuinely and saying, okay, yeah, we do care about academics, but we care about survival a little more than academics, and independence isn't an option for us. So yeah, that's kind of where I land on that.
I think academics should be an option for everybody. And I just don't know why it has to be controversial. I don't know why it has to be a thing where, we're all looking for or we're all struggling to understand it. When you're 104th in the world, 104th in the world, that's crazy. Like listen, guys, I just don't think it's something that we should poo-poo because it makes people a lot of money. That's all I'm saying. And I don't want to make some big deal out of it because I know there's people in here that are really excited about it. I think the academics matter. Patrick Boren says, John is a media guy from Kansas State. John who? What did I miss about that? DWE says, get informed as best you can. LOL, said like a true blood PAC fan, dripping with condensation. Dripping with condensation. Melvin Darkies says, all this talk about academic institutions between the Big 12 and the Pac-10, are you aware the University of Houston, UCF, and Baylor are Carnegie-designated Research One institutions? Yes, we went over each one of these schools last week.
Yeah.
When all of this started coming out. So I'm fine with that. Sparsh M says, 104th in the world, why are you guys lying? What are you talking about? See, this is what I don't understand. Why do people get so upset about it? That's what I'd like to know. Of the world, Craig. Okay. Tony apparently is a K-State media guy. Arizona State athletic director has already stated he believes the deal is more than enough to stay put. Okay. That's cool. Remick Johnson says Tony is a USC fan, so he is all big, so confident that there will be a good deal because it doesn't affect him. Well, you guys, I mean, Tony, do you want to be right? Okay, congratulations, dude, you're right. All right, cool. Like, I just don't have an ego about it. People get so fired up about being right, or I have sources, or I'm in the know. Like, okay, cool. Knock yourself out, dude. Go for it. Like, you want to be the guy, man. I just don't happen to care that much. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it just doesn't matter to me. Brandon Trujillo says that's not the real Tony Altamore. I don't even know who the real Tony Altamore is.
Do you know who the real
Am I supposed
Batman
to know
is?
who this guy is?
Are you the real Tony?
Yeah, I don't, Tanner Plummer says, hey, Mont, as a Utah Tech dropout, where do you think Utah Tech will be ranked when they wake up? Number one? Yeah, you guys are Utah Tech dropouts. That's one of the best insults I've ever gotten. I was not a Utah Tech. It is what it is. Larry Pilgrim gives us a $10 tip to say Tony Altamore isn't the real Tony and possibly a Big 12 homer posing and creating more smoke. Burner account. Okay, that's great.
And look what he says. I think we have to do it justice.
What?
Right here, dude, right above where you are. Where'd it go? Right there.
I'm the real one, folks. Don't listen to Big 12 Anon bots in the chat.
Are you the real Tony?
Are you the real Tony? Are you the real one? Are you kidding me right now?
Part of the plan.
Like, this is what I just don't understand.
It's so funny, dude.
I've never understood it.
Schemers trying to control their little world.
And I never will. Like, are we really into this whole...
Bro, we're in some InfoWars territory over Tony.